Alrighty, welcome into episode 64 of Happy Medium. My apologies for a little bit of a delay. I don't think I've done an interview in like a couple months, but it's not for a lack of trying. I'm back today. As we approach summer here, I have another very special guest for you guys. Um, Chicago sports radio guest. He's been in the business for a long time, does an outstanding job on ESPN 1000 Chicago, host of the Carmen and your girl show, none other than Carmen DeFalco. Thank you so much, Carmen. Appreciate it.
You got it, Sam. What's going on?
Not much, not much. Just been looking forward to doing an interview. It's been a little bit, so I appreciate you for wanting to come on and responding. Not a lot of people always respond to me and get back to me via email, so I appreciate you for that.
My
Um,
pleasure. Happy to make some time.
yeah, so we can get started here. So the first question I like to ask all my guests is pretty broad, kind of depending on how much you want to get into it. But what would you say is your first, or what was your first interest in sports?
My first interest? Um, that's a good question. I mean, like as long as I can remember, I just always sort of I gravitated towards competition and watching people play professional sports. Like I think it was probably going to games and stuff a lot with my dad when I was a kid that got me hooked on being a sports fan. And I liked to play and played mostly very average in everything I tried. But I always loved being around it. I love being around, teammates. I loved watching like my friends that play their sports in high school and going to games. I love going to pro games as long as I can remember. It was just something, I don't know. I've had like this, it's had this pull on me for about as long, literally as long as I can remember, probably since I was 5 or 6 years old. And I think a lot of it is just baked into going to games with my dad and my brothers when I was a kid. I remember going to my first professional sporting event that I ever went to was a game at the old stadium, a Blackhawks game at the old stadium, and just the energy and the vibe of being in a place like that and experiencing it. And it was like, yeah, this I like. I can be a part of this. And I came up at a good time in the '80s when the Hawks were still pretty relevant before they were not so relevant for much of the '90s and the early 2000s. But Michael was about to take the world by storm too, and so to be able to go, like, to be young and to be along for the ride for those types of things. Plus, the Bears were great in the '80s when I was a kid. Those things probably helped fuel my passion for rooting for our teams.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't quite get to have the Chicago sports team success when I was younger, I feel like. I mean, the White Sox won the World Series when I was four, I think, and then after that they weren't really good for a while. Cubs won the World Series, I think my sophomore year in high school, but before that they weren't very good. Bears have, they're good now, but it took them a while, and Bulls are kind of, you know,
Mm.
I know the Bulls had that stretch when I was like 9 or 10 when Derrick Rose was tearing up the league, but now they're kind of mired in nowhere. So, always cool. No, but kind of going off of your initial sports interest, then what drew you to the kind of realm of sports media and that kind of thing?
Well, it just seemed like it came along at probably a good time for me where I was in college, finishing up college, and sports radio really started taking off in different places around the country, including here. Obviously, by the mid to late '90s, second sports station came to town. There was a little bit more competition. It was a medium that seemed like it was going to really have a place where it could thrive, especially in big cities where you've got deep rooted fan bases that are, many generations deep usually, and very provincial kind of places where there's a great appetite to talk about their teams, mostly complain about their teams, things like that. I wanted to be in radio and television. I very much enjoyed the talk format of radio ever since I was young. I mean, since I was a teenager. And it just seemed, honestly, more than anything, the only thing I can pinpoint is it seemed like it would be something fun to do. Like I wanted to be in radio a lot. I love sports. An opportunity kind of presented itself to start working part time where they were looking to fill some shifts at ESPN Radio. Because, like I said, it was pretty new to the market when I was able to have, small demo tape put together, some real world working experience working as a producer at WLS Radio. So timing of it was kind of good, and I saw an opportunity to maybe break in, and I did.
Yeah, so kind of going off of that, maybe expanding a little bit more. Like, what was your first like true experience in the business, and then like what made you kind of want to, maybe think you could do it for your life, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, my first like real taste of it was working as a producer. I had interned at WLS Radio, and I got a job after that. It was just a part-time producer. I mean, I was still finishing up school, so I got a job as a part-time producer working. There was 3 mornings a week, I want to say, on a very successful uh, morning talk show, news talk, not sports talk, on WLS back in the day. It was the Don Wade and Roma show, and that was, again, that just kind of continued to fuel my desire to want to do what they did. Not necessarily in the news talk format. I didn't like it. I didn't like the political aspect as much. I still don't. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. So I knew I didn't want to be there, but I was learning. I was learning a lot. I was learning a lot from Don Wade, who was a veteran at this point, even in the 90s, was a 30-year veteran of talk radio in this country and had a very successful show here. And I was learning about how to format a show, how to interact with callers, how to talk to guests, wait, coming up with ideas, formatting things around sound or stories, all kinds of like really fascinating, interesting things that I feel like it's hard to learn in a school setting. You kind of needed some real world experience. And then once I started doing that for a little while, I mean, I really like sort of had no doubts that I wanted to be on the radio. And like I said, the sports talk avenue seemed good because there were some other avenues opening up, and ESPN was coming into the market as the second sports station, obviously, but it was creating some competition, it was creating some jobs. And I just happened to be a little fortunate that they were looking for some young people and some young voices. I mean, my first real experience there was literally working one shift a week. I mean, that was it. They had an opportunity. They were looking for somebody to do a graveyard shift. Back in those days, you were still doing updates, around the clock, 24/7, 20, 40, and 60. I'm sorry, top 20 and 40. There was no cell phones. There were no, you couldn't, you weren't even really it wasn't easily accessible to find scores online necessarily, like in a very quick, rapid way that we sort of take for granted today. So they were just filling slots, and they had like this overnight Sports Center anchor slot that they needed on the radio on a Saturday night into a Sunday morning. And that was it. That's how I started, and I just kind of started plugging away from there. But that was all I needed really to know that it was something I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be a little bit of a grind maybe at first, but just once I started doing it, I had no doubts that it was something I wanted to stick with as best I could.
Nice, nice. So kind of what you were mentioning a little bit, like from those early days, only working like one shift per week. Like, how would you say you were able to kind of ascend from there to then where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a certain amount of perseverance, obviously, and just not even, I shouldn't even maybe term it as perseverance, just sort of showing people the desire that you have to do more. I mean, that was what I was always kind of pushing for. What other events could I cover? What other shifts could I pick up? Can I go out and cover a Hawks game? Can I cover the Chicago Marathon? Can I? It was basically look a baseball game. Like it was basically looking for ways to show them that I was eager and that I wanted to do stuff. And eventually, then some of those assignments just happen to come your way, and then make the most out of those opportunities. I mean, that was more than anything, it was just that. It was just sort of a determination to keep at it, to show them that I really cared, that I wanted to be on the air, that I wanted to do more, and that the work I did was good. That was basically it.
Has so has I guess either kind of when you were starting out or even kind of up to your time now, has there been like a favorite like segment or like a favorite story that you've done covered or anything like that that like really kind of sticks out for you?
Boy, like story wise, it's been fun being able to cover some championship teams, for sure, and being like sort of connected to those moments with our fans. I mean, that's been a lot of fun. I mean, I feel pretty fortunate to say, even though I'm a White Sox fan and I'm not a Cub fan, I'm pretty fortunate to say I was at both clinching World Series games. You think about the long droughts and how few and far between they've been for fans in the city, for baseball fans in the city. I was at both clinching games. I was in Cleveland for Game 7 in 2016. I was in Houston in 2005 for the White Sox, and like being there and sharing those moments and experiences on the air, sort of bringing our fans that weren't there with us sort of into the sights and sounds of being on the road at those places, talking about Chicago fans kind of taking over, what it was like to be in the stadium. Seeing those monumental events were pretty great. I was in Philly in 2010 for the Hawks, not for the clincher, but for games. What would those have been? Games 3 and 4, right? The middle games. Being there, broadcasting live from the city, being at both of those games, those moments, I think, more than anything, kind of stand out as like, I don't know, the true sort of pinnacle of some of the stuff that we've done. I would love it to experience that from the perspective of the Bears finally making a deep run and getting to a Super Bowl and winning. Of course, I've seen them play in a couple of Super Bowls and fortunate to be a young kid winning one. But I mean, you talk about a lifetime ago. It's like, I was 9, and I'm not that young anymore. I was 9 when the Bears won the Super Bowl. So I would have a totally different, I think, appreciation for it and life experience now. That's like kind of the last sort of box to check. I mean, granted, I was just kind of breaking into the business when the Bulls won the last championship in '98 when the dynasty was wrapping up. But even that, I felt sort of like a little bit connected to. I was interning at Channel 7 with Mark Giangreco and Jim Rose and Brad Palmer and Jeff Blanzy at the time. And so I was like a little bit connected to that summer, the very end of the season and that summer, and then the drama that ensued with the lockout and Michael retiring. But the last like thing that I really want to be a part of for, just my career and for Chicago sports fans to appreciate and enjoy is a Bears Super Bowl. And so I'm still waiting to check that box, and I'm more hopeful now than I was just a couple years ago with Ben Johnson. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. They were what 2 games away from Su-
2 games.
the Super Bowl for this past season. So hopefully they
Yeah.
make the NFC Championship, the Super Bowl. So we'll see.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure. Should be a fun season, hopefully. So
Yeah.
I like to ask, or I've asked this to a couple different like not radio people, but I've had um some other people on who have like roles in sports where they have to like engage with fans and talk with fans and stuff like that. Um, so for you as a radio host, like what is kind of like the key to making sure that kind of whatever opinion that you have or your host have or producer like whatever you want to say is like being listened to and being heard by, like all kinds of different fans and especially fans that are in the third largest market here.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I know. I just try to be relatable, I guess, more than anything. And it's not always going to be that way. It's not always going to come across that way. No matter what you try, some, people aren't going to like it. And, that's okay. I mean, I understand that, however a person does a show, whatever their opinions and attitudes are, it isn't always going to be universally accepted or liked, or you know not everybody's going to think you're witty or funny. I mean, we just try to be ourselves mostly. I mean, I think that sounds simple, but it's some of the best advice people gave me along the way when I was sort of coming up, learning how, the do's and don'ts of the business, just to not fake it, be yourself. I try to always do that. Talk about the things that are genuinely interesting to me. I work pretty hard to try to stay educated on all the stuff that we talk about on a daily basis. Mostly our local teams, but big picture league stuff across the sports as well. And that's not like it's hard work. I mean, it's what I've always wanted to do, right? It's like what we talked about earlier, being a sports fan. It's great that somebody's going to actually pay you to do this, to sort of watch games and study about them and learn about them and track data and stats and things like that. So I just try to always remind myself to do all those things and bring it to the listeners in the most fun, interesting way we can. Not like I said, there's sometimes it fuels good debate. Sometimes the conversation, can get a little sideways on all of us. I understand that. Sometimes we probably say things that we maybe want to take back or that we regret, especially when we get passionate and animated when debating with fans and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep it. I try to bring everything to the air that is like as genuine as it could possibly be. Like the things that really matter to me and the things I really care about. We try to discuss those things every day with people.
Nice, nice. So, when it comes to kind of like you were saying, like just getting to express, your opinion and whatever you have to say, and whether or not people kind of agree with it or not. Like, what would you say, kind of in totality, that you have enjoyed the most about being on radio in your job and getting to host shows?
I think probably the idea that we do provide some entertainment for people. That we try to make them laugh, try to make them think a little bit, maybe think differently about teams, players, leagues, ideas. Like just be a different voice. I think, and my favorite part of just meeting people in the street that say, "Oh yeah, hey, we listen. You guys make me laugh, or you get me home from work, or you get me to work in the morning, or I'm in the car all day. I'm a driver. I'm on the road. I do this. I deliver. Whatever it is. We have you on all the time. You guys make us laugh. Like that's the best, most rewarding thing by far. Just to try to make people think a little bit, laugh a little bit. We like to be kind of goofy. We like to sometimes veer off of sports if we talk about things that are happening in our lives, maybe that are very relatable to people, especially that are going to be of like age. It's stuff like that is very rewarding to me. Makes me happy to know that people are actually, some people out there actually enjoying it and getting a kick out of it. If we can make people laugh, I think that's like the biggest win for us. That's kind of why I knew I never wanted to be talking hard news, talking politics, covering politics. Um, it's just something that I knew I wouldn't have as much of an interest in. Those people play those roles and they do it quite well. And they're very important things. Don't get me wrong. What we talk about isn't all that important at the end of the day. But I think what is important is giving someone, something that they can listen to that maybe does distract them from more hard hitting real world things, whatever's heavy things are going on in their lives. And like that's the most rewarding part of kind of just being on the air talking about something that should be fun. It's not always, I get it, but is mostly fun, and doesn't have really any serious sort of hard hitting real world consequence. Like that's why I like doing the job, and I like it when people tell us that they get a kick out of listening to us.
Nice, nice. So, kind of off that a little bit, would you say that your job has, or maybe not has changed, but your job is different, like based on kind of how the teams in Chicago are performing on the field?
I mean, I think it's well, yes, I think when things are really, really good or really, really bad is those are the best of times. I think the middle is sort of, we were joked about the Bulls earlier, and they're in this, I don't know what. I think that's the way most people feel about them, and I don't think there's much interest right now, and that's what starts to kill sort of a franchise, a fan base. It starts to wear you out. Like that's a dangerous place for owners, for teams to find themselves. I mean, I think it's better if you're one or the other. If you're really, really great or you're really, really bad. So, when teams sort of meander the way the Bulls have, you know, it can be it can be a little bit more challenging to talk about them on a daily basis. You never know if people even want you talking about them. Not that that is like the driving factor. We try to talk about the things that are important to us and that are relevant. Um, but you almost find yourself wondering, like, does anybody care what I'm saying right now about what's happening with this team? It's funny in a weird way. I'm like slightly reinvigorated by the Bulls and that they got lucky in the lottery and that they're picking in the top four, because that always seemed to be the goal all along. Like, can you at least get to the top four? And then they seemingly screwed up the season by winning too many games early, and then they were awful in the back half. It's like they're going to pick ninth again. Who cares? This is sort of it's reinvigorated me. I don't know if it has in large part the fan base yet. Maybe as we get closer to the draft and depending on how the board falls that night, maybe it will. But like that's the kind of stuff that gets me sort of excited. As bad as they've been and as middling as they've been, it's like, oh, hey, they got a little lucky and now they might have a chance. Like, what if Caleb Wilson falls in their lap? Like that might be, we might look at that in 5 years and go, holy cow, can you believe how lucky they got? So I get excited a little bit more by stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know as a Bulls fan myself, I was hoping that they'd get like one or two. I mean,
Well,
yeah,
definitely. But I'd say it was still going to be a long shot to get in that top four. And that's why was genuinely, I did oh, wow, they didn't get 9 or 10. This is amazing. And then, when they came back from break and they showed, picking fourth with the Bulls, like, oh, all right, but it beats the alternative. I'll tell you that.
yeah, yeah. I just now having a new like front office and whoever they're gonna have as their head coach and a
Yeah.
fourth pick on the roster. I don't know if they're gonna be good in the next couple of years, but there's certainly some reason for optimism. I feel
Yeah,
like.
I agree.
I feel like my complaint with the previous regime was that like for the most part in the last like 3 years of their tenure, just that the roster would just never change. So you pretty much knew what you were getting like season in, season out, and that just became like really frustrating. But now, even that they're probably going to be bad, there's probably going to be more roster churning with the players that this new regime doesn't want. So hopefully they'll be good in the next couple years, but we'll
I
see.
hope. I think they'll at the very least be a little bit more interesting next year with a top four pick on their roster. So, and like you said, new coach and new leadership in a different direction. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if I had asked this earlier or something similar to the effect. But since you are a prominent radio host in the third largest market, what would you say it's taken for you to have the success that you've had being in Chicago in comparison to, potentially being in, a much smaller market that like doesn't have the fan size or the teams?
Well, I think it helps doing it in the place you're from, first of all. I mean, and growing up here, knowing the history of our teams and, watching generations before me sort of live and die with them, and hearing about the pains and struggles quite often. I mean, like, I always think that helps. So if you are from a big city with a strong, with a strong fan base, you know, go to work in that town without question. What does it take to stay there? The perseverance part that I mentioned earlier is a big part of it. Because there are a lot of ups and downs. I mean, there always are, right? And in any walk of life, I mean, you get dealt a lot of things, and it's very often is it straight up or linear and or meteoric. I mean, I think you have to be able to roll with some of the ups and downs. I mean, there's no doubt I got to a point um, half a dozen years or so into my career where it was hard, and I was wondering, like, what do I really want out of this, and can I keep doing it? And I'm as happy that I decided to stick with it and just keep trying to get better, trying to take people's advice on how to get better, how to do things differently. So I think all of those things kind of came together and allowed me to stay at it, become better at the craft, and then do enough where people recognize that, and you are still wanted in a place. And because that's ultimately what is going to matter more than anything else. Got to have eyes and ears on you, right? And so if you're able to do that, once you do finally break through, you're going to have a chance at sticking around. So I would say, but it doesn't happen easily, and doesn't quite often in this business. It doesn't happen quickly. It's just something important to remember that a lot of times it's going to take It's going to take some getting up off the mat.
Yeah. So what you were just mentioning, what like with you wanting to get better at your craft, like what did that entail for you in regards to wanting to get better at what you do?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, not being afraid to have people not like you, I think is a good is an important one. Not being afraid to offend someone if you're not taking any sort of personal shots, of course, and we don't do that. Just being critical of the job someone else is doing as an outside observer. I mean, that is what we're ultimately, that's why our jobs exist. We're giving people a place to react to things. And as we soak in what we're watching, and we have strong beliefs and passions about it, because like I said, we're from here. These are the teams we love. You know, not being afraid to bring that then to the air at the risk of maybe offending someone you've worked with or you've interviewed before or you even like. I think those things took a while to learn that part of the business, and that you're not ever, you can't always be liked. I do think that's important, and I think I learned through some tough love and just some other experiences. Like, you really do have to be real and say what you mean, say what you feel. So I think those things came in handy, and learning some of those lessons early on came in handy.
Nice. So, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to maybe end with like a little bit of a fun question, not related to radio. So, I think I've seen on social media you post occasionally about like going to restaurants and bars and doing stuff with alcohol. So could you kind of talk about like your interest in like whiskey and like bourbon and like just like that kind of field overall for you?
I Yeah, yeah, I do love bourbon. I love whiskey. I've loved it since I was about. I went on a trip to Ireland when I was the summer after I turned 21 with my dad, and I did kind of take a liking to the art of making whiskey, and I started learning more and more about it. I did. I don't know how. It was by no. There was no real intention other than it was something that interested me, and I liked the way it tasted. I really did get pretty big into bourbon, and I'm talking in the early 2000s. And then when it was very uncool to drink bourbon, nobody drank it. Things were very easy to get. My friends mostly made fun of me in my 20s for drinking it, and then all of a sudden something happened, like around 2010, where brown liquor starts coming back and bourbon makes this unbelievable comeback, bourbon and rye. And it becomes popular and things start to disappear off the shelf. And then and social media starts to explode. Like, it's these worlds came together, and all of a sudden there was a place for like a whiskey influencer. Now, I use that term to describe me very loosely. I mean, I've had the fine pleasure of being around whiskey and being around bar owners and things like that because of our job for so long, of knowing a lot of people in the social media world that are true influencers in a way that I am not. Like, for me, it's more of a hobby. For a lot of these guys that I follow, a bunch of really good guys, and men and women that do this, they are doing it more as a living. I mean, for me, it is truly a hobby. I mean, yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff here. I got the full bourbon closet over to my left over here. But when somehow these worlds came together and people were like, "Well, you should talk about it on your social media pages," and I almost didn't even know what to say. I was like, "Talk about it how?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know, review bourbons or tell people what they should look for." And I said, "Oh, all right, that's simple enough." And I started doing that, and believe it or not, people actually seemingly liked it. They would ask questions. They were like oddly curious and interested, and that's like the simplest way it started for me. Again, it's still mostly a hobby. We've tied in this great program with work with the station called Whiskey University, which is going on. I think we're going on 5 years, right? Yeah, we're going on 5 years this October. 5 or 6, I've lost count. No, it's got to be 5 because we didn't do it during COVID. We must have started in the fall of 2021. So we're going on 5 years of this program where we get to go out and mingle with fans and listeners and have great engagement with people and learn about different products and just drink whiskey and talk about it. And it's great. It's a great community. Like I said, I've met a lot of cool people that I hang out with throughout the course of the year, that are super nerdy into bourbon and whiskey the way I am. So just a happy accident, I guess, more than anything. Like I said, these confluence of events that just sort of came together at the right time, and it happened to be something that I had a genuine passion for. That I've said that word a lot. I mean, that's basically all I'm trying to do. You know, I love to cook as well. People are like, why do you put on cooking video? I love to cook. People have always said, put some of your videos on social media. Um, you know, these are not things that are forced. I mean, like my sports and as far as like hobbies, like the things we do in our life, right? Not like our family and our friends, like the things we do in life. Sports and whiskey and cooking are and travel. Say those are my four favorite things. I just have to figure out a way now to go have somebody pay me to travel to different places, Sam, and like report from these different places. I want Anthony Bourdain's old job. Anthony Bourdain was a hero of mine. Like that's my dream job. So like travel and experiences and sports and food and great whiskey and wine, like those are the things that I love. And so if we can talk about it and people are actually someone interested, I'm always very happy to talk about it.
Yeah, it's really cool to me how you've been able to show your interest in that regard, and like not just kind of show the sports fan side of you, but show that other side of you too. Because I know, like for me myself, I've never been a alcohol fan. Just personally, I've never enjoyed wine, beer, like whatever alcohol I'm drinking. So I tend to not drink at all when I'm
Good.
bar with friends or whatever. But like seeing stuff like that and the stuff that you post like that, it does make me kind of curious about like maybe trying new kinds of drinks if I'm ever kind of up for it, or like showing new passions or anything like that. So it's a really cool thing, I think, that you do, and you're very open about it. You obviously post a lot about it too. So
Well, and what I would just say, like, whatever that one thing is, or those couple things are, whatever it is what you should be identifying as like, okay, now how do I share my enjoyment for X, Y, and Z with the people you're trying to reach, right? You're doing your podcast and like and you've got other plans and things that you want to do in the future. And as you build an audience and you build a fan base, like what are the other things that you can do that you can sort of enjoy with them, that you can relate to them? And like, so whatever it is, I would just say find those things. If it, and it can be a million different things, let's face it. That's for as much kind of nonsense that's out there in social media, I mean, that's the one nice part of it sometimes, is the content where people are sort of doing things that you're interested in doing maybe, and you guys have some sort of shared experience with it.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I always enjoy doing this podcast with whoever I can have on, and really really enjoyed this episode, Carmen. This is really fun for me. I always enjoy getting to talk to Chicago people and fellow Western suburbanite, just like you.
That's right. Yeah, we grew up now. I mean, I live now not far from where we grew up, so that's good. It's my pleasure, Sam. Anytime.
For sure. No, I really appreciate it, and continued good luck with your show. I I don't listen every day, but I try to listen a pretty good amount for the times that I'm free. So I always enjoy it.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
You got it.